Hi everyone and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to talk about some books that I've read for Algeria. Algeria is one of the countries of Invisible Cities this month. If you don't know, Invisible Cities is a project where every month we're challenged to read some books from a certain country. One of those countries this month is Algeria. I had some plans. First off, today was reading while the sun was still out. We've got a couple of minutes left. It's going to be an issue. The other was making some food. I was going to make a dado cake called... that I forgot the name of. I meant to say. And I was going to start cooking this afternoon, and then I just looked at the ingredients like, oh wait, but I don't have this, and I don't have that, and I don't have that. So now I haven't made the cake. I was just, in one of those mindsets that I was not going to go outside that day again. So no cake, no Algerian food. And next month I'm moving, so there won't be any food made for the countries of next month either. So we've got 3 books. Also, I've got a thing on my face. Nothing fancy. Apparently my immune system is telling me that I need to be a little bit more careful. So I've got this thing that in Dutch is called gordelroos. No idea what it's called in English. But I have got some books that I have read for Algeria. One I've actually read this month, and the others I'd read previously to January 2022. And I did also want to show them, talk about them with you. Algeria is a country in the north of Africa. It's pretty large. Apparently it's surface-wise, it's the biggest country in Africa, and it's the 10th biggest country in the world. But a lot of that land is also the Sahara, and there's also some mountains in there. So when it comes to people, Algeria is not as big. Algeria has a history where it's been taken over by other emperors and whatnot through the years, and the last country that took over was France. France had colonized Algeria somewhere in the 1800s, I believe. And Algeria has... and I'm French, so I kind of was interested in Algeria because of that, especially Algeria has a kind of special history in the sense for France, which, I mean, I'm really talking about this colonialism thing because that's kind of how the eyes through which I also see Algeria, in the sense that I wanted to learn more about that side of history and what France had done and everything surrounding that, partly also because my grandfather apparently has fought in the Algerian War. And last week, actually, when I was in France, I kind of finally grabbed up all my courage to ask him a little bit about it, because it's not something that we ever talk about. And it was a really nice experience. He talked about it for about an hour, about his experience, and mostly the experience of just being a young man in a group like that, and he wasn't involved in a lot of the fighting itself, so that was also a thing. But it was really nice to, have all these questions kind of answered. In a sense, I mean, you don't know what a person does in that role, and it was just really him talking about being a young man with other young men, and like also stupid things that they did, and the having fun part, and also the harder part. But yeah, it was nice to talk about that with him. And so I've also previously I already tried to learn a little bit about the role of France in Algeria, because Algeria had a really special role to France. It wasn't one of the other colonies. France really felt Algeria was part of France, and that's why the War for Independence was a really gruesome one. It took about 8 years. And I read about that in the French Antifada by Andrew Hussey. So this is neither written by an Algerian author nor a French one, which is something that I was, in hindsight, looking for, because I wanted a view that was a little bit removed. Now, Andrew Hussey is British, and obviously Britain also has a big history of colonialism, so I think that will still kind of siphon through into the views, but still I felt this was a very, he really looked at things from both sides. He talked about the horrendous things that some of the French did, but he also talked about the things that Algerians did. So this is a book about, it's not only about Algeria, it's also about Morocco and Tunisia, other North African countries that France had colonized, and for each country he goes through how the colonization went, what life was in that time, in the whole colonial time, and then he focuses more on the wars for independence, or how that whole situation went, and the development of the countries afterwards, which I really liked, and also the roles of, well, the positions more of Moroccans, Tunisians, and Algerians in France, which was also different per group. Algeria is a big country, so he talks most about that one. I really found this very interesting. I liked how he showed me all of the different opinions that there were. It wasn't just Algerians versus French, but I mean, on all of the sides you had people that wanted a war, didn't want a war, wanted independence, didn't want anything, but which pushed into a war, whose opinion changed because of the horrendous things that happened. I found this a very complete side of that history, and if you're looking for something like that, you're absolutely going to find what you're looking for in this. If you like a little bit more of a deep dive into this topic from the point of view of French colonialization. I don't know if it's, God, I've written a lot of notes in this. I should look over my notes actually again, because there's so much information, you kind of forget a lot of the stuff. I mean, the horrendous things, for example, I just tend to forget, but yeah, it's a really good book. I really appreciated it, and I would absolutely recommend it, especially if you're French and like me, you've learned nothing about the colonial history, probably also because when we were in school, those wars were still so close historically. The people, that's at least what discussions that I've had with my mother, that one of the problems that there's people that have grown up in Algeria, for example, who are French, who are culturally of French, who went there, whose parents, whose grandparents went there as colonialists, colonized people that go to there, and they feel Algerian, and they feel like Algeria is part of France, in the same way that, I don't know, Paris is a part of France. And that it's hard to have this discussion about, hey, maybe what we did there was wrong, when those people are still alive. You're going to have a different conversation when we're a little bit more removed from it. That's also, we've had discussions on the Invisible Cities Discord a little bit about the position of Camus. Albert Camus is one of those people that is French and Algerian, and like, what box do you put him in? Because he grew up in Algeria, he felt Algerian, but he was also simultaneously a French. His culture was French. He went there, he's colonial power. He's going to have a different position. The whole colonialism really muddles everything. So yeah, it's a question of, is he Algerian, is he French, is he both, what is he, which is very difficult. He's obviously not here anymore to talk about this with us. We've got a different opinion on colonialism now than 60 years ago, so that's Albert Camus. But still, would recommend this book. Another book that I really, really loved and I wanted to talk about, that I've read previously, I think I read this one 2 to 3 years ago, is L'Art de Perdre by Alice Zeniter. It's recently been translated to English. I guess the name would be The Art of Losing? Yes, it's The Art of Losing. So Alice Zeniter is French-Algerian. Somehow, interestingly enough, in her case, I'm not in this whole, oh no, what is she? She's both. And this book also, it's 3 generations. And she talks mostly from the point of view, I think there's 3 parts also. It's a young woman who is French-Algerian, and she knows nothing about her Algerian heritage. She can't talk to her grandmother because they don't have a language in common, and she starts discovering more about her past. So we've got a whole section about her grandfather, who was a wealthy farm owner in Algeria, but he didn't really have an opinion on the war, so he became a harki despite himself. A harki is a word that was used to describe Algerians that were pro-French, and that most of them, at the end of the war, during the Independence War, had to flee to France because they were kicked out. They were going to get murdered if they stay. So that's what happened to this grandfather. It's a very interesting take to see also kind of like the violence through his eyes. and the fear for his family and the family that what was left behind. He was also a soldier, and you see how at the beginning he's still very much part of the communities of old soldiers that went to France during the Second World War, I believe. And then how, because he's seen as, no, you're a traitor, that he's cast away. Then it kind of goes through to this history of the son of the grandfather, so the father of the main character. Is she main character? They're all kind of main characters. So it kind of goes to his point of view when they flee to France, and you see a young boy, I believe he's still 10, 12 maybe at the time, and going through the whole fleeing, looking for asylum, being an asylum seeker, being in those camps. I have this vivid recollection of him talking about his younger brother, who's still very young at the time, and who at one point has this red coat with like rabbit ears, and that he's just joyfully running through the camps where the conditions were atrocious, as you can imagine, and just being a happy kid with his red coat, and just you seeing that this red rabbit coat everywhere of just a kid being happy despite hunger and filth and just something that is very unhuman. So it talks about him in that part of their life, but also them growing up, being Algerian French, and him having my battery is going to die, yay fun! But him being the one in the family that speaks French, and then his later brothers and sister kind of raised and also speaking French, and him not being the only one that has to translate all of the harder stuff, the stuff to do with immigration, with the gas, and etc. So it's really his role, and him kind of blaming Algeria also, and that's why he doesn't talk about his path with his daughter. Then we've got, obviously, the daughter being raised, and why she doesn't get to learn anything about her past, and some of her brothers and sister, they are given French names, and that the history of that. It's a wonderful book, seeing all these steps. I love family sagas, and this whole what are you also is also, I mean, is she French, is she Algerian? She doesn't know, and not knowing about her past and the past of her family also plays a role in that. So it's a great book. I loved it. I've just bought, when I was in France last weekend, another of her books, and I'm really excited to get to it, although it's completely different. I would highly recommend this one as well. It's really, really good. Get to it. My battery's going to die, but in a second, when I'm back, for you it's not going to make a difference, I'm going to talk about the book that I actually read this month, and that is Qu'attendent les singes by Yasmina Khadra, and that would translate to What Are the Monkeys Waiting For? Let me go try to find my charger thingy, the batteries. I've lost it. Today's not going as planned. I've been searching already for 10 minutes. See you in a sec. Back again. Couldn't find the battery. Honestly, I didn't really look because I'd looked previously. But charged. You know, there's this fight between the battery and the sun. The lonely loser is me. Anyway, sorry for this intermezzo. But Qu'attendent les singes by Yasmina Khadra. I was interested in this one because it says that it's kind of a political police thriller through which you get to know the things that divide the Algerian society. Sounds pretty good. So the body of a young woman is found, because that's what bodies of young women do. They are found in random places. Her boob's been bitten off. And so a research and investigation starts, and there's also parallel stories with a man that has a lot of power. He owns a lot of newspapers, and you see that he's owned by another dude that has a lot of power, and then those two stories kind of mix and match, not in a nice way. Obviously the big fancy dude is related, has a relation with what happened and the girl, and it does what it says a little bit on the back. It does show you a lot of the corruption that goes on, and how people are kind of sick and tired of it and don't really know where it's going to go, and especially the position of some of the investigators, how they're just sick and tired of it. They know that they have to do stuff, but they also know that because of the power that the bad people have, that they're never going to get justice. Justice no, it's never going to happen. So it's kind of about that. Now, why didn't I like it though? Because maybe you noticed it didn't really work for me. There was a long period at the beginning where I really didn't know why there were these two different storylines and how they were matched. The way that they clash really comes out of nowhere. At least it came out of nowhere for me. And then it also felt like some of the loose ends weren't really tied up really well. So that's a thing that I kind of struggled with. The other thing that I struggled with is that a lot of the times it felt like it was written for French people, or at least for non-Algerians. There were a lot of parts that I felt like he was explaining Algeria to me, where he literally said, oh, there is a saying Algeria that goes this and that, or oh, at that moment they were representatives of the Algerian this and this and that. Because of that, it really felt like it was not a book written by an Algerian for other Algerians somehow. I don't think people that are living in Algeria would read this. It felt like it was written for people outside of it, like we were explain things, and I don't know, that didn't really gel with me. It also kind of made me think of this whole story of, okay, why do writers from old colonies still feel that it's better to write in the language of the colonizer? So I mean, people have to do what they want, and I'm happy on the one side that the writer wrote in French, because then I could read it, so we've got that, but that he was like, oh, in Algeria, this and this and that, and well, in Algeria, this and this and that. Like, just show me. You don't have to tell me in Algeria this. Just show me what it's like, right, for a more global public. I didn't like that I was the public. So I'm a bit conflicted, because otherwise, on the other hand, I probably wouldn't have picked it up if it hadn't been written like that. And I don't know if the rest of his other books are also written in this way, and that's why he's a more well-known author. But I did appreciate this idea of this whole sentiment of, oh, there's corruption anywhere, we don't know where we're going as a country. I didn't really like this one. I was kind of disappointed in it, but I'm happy that I finally got to it, because it had been sitting on my shelves for a while. So those are 3 books. These 2, honestly, are really good for very different reasons. This one, maybe if you like political thrillers and mystery thrillers, it would be more of your thing. That might also be why it didn't work less for me, because those are genres that were simply more or less my thing. Always good, though, to sometimes dive into other little pots and smell what they're like. Those were my Algerian adventures. Obviously, highlight for me was talking about the Algerian War with my grandfather a little bit, but I don't think that would have been possible without me reading these books. So it's good, to see how reading kind of cycles through in your life in that way. Would have liked to make the food. Don't think it's going to happen. I'm going to eat the dates. That's going to be what's going to happen. I'm really going to stop talking. These were my books. Those 2 were highlights. What has your reading been like? I'll see you in another video. Bye.
Ba-chum, ba-chum, chum.